So, our discussion for today is about creating a new society, and I want to carry it a step beyond the U.S. Constitution. What I want Article 1 of our manifesto to say is that every sentient being has the inherent right to absolute self-determination, providing that in exercising their right, they're not bringing material harm or preventing any other being from exercising that same right. Now, that's Article 1. Article 2 is a different one. But Angela had a little bit of an exception to that in that saying, if I'm exercising my right to self-determination and attack someone, then them attacking me back is violating my right to self-determination, their right to self-determination. So if I defend myself, now I am violating that other person's right to self-determination because they're trying to overcome me to gain benefit and benefit their own tribe of people. I sort of agree with that, but I think that's mitigated by the fact that if someone is attacking me, they have already breached Article 1, and therefore I am not bound by that in the case of defending myself, which she was going to add as an amendment to the first article.
See, the problem is, how do you define sentient being? And really, anything that feels is that sentient being. So what we've got is trees being sentient beings then? Animals?
Well, I think the literal definition of sentience is having conscious self-awareness.
And feeling, actually. And trees and plants do feel.
But do they have conscious self-awareness? That's
we cannot
the question.
define that because we do not understand their language, how they communicate. We are going in blind and just judging based on our own beliefs of what communication is, for instance. So I believe that we, in our pathological altruism, if we go about saying that if we can't do harm to something, well, basically we can't eat then. I mean, we've already seen what that leads to when we're talking about animals. But when you're really thinking about it, actually, even plants, you're hurting something. You're killing something, in fact. So, I mean, plants, not only do you have to kill the plant, but in harvesting the plant, you're killing so many insects and different tiny little things and bees and bugs, and with all your pesticides, you're doing so much damage. In fact, if you're gonna say that we can't do any harm, well, we should just kill all humans because humans are doing harm to the entire earth. So what?
Well,
we can't defend our own?
My point in the first article was not about doing harm. It was merely ensuring that everyone has that right inherently to determine how their own lives are played out.
Well, but they really can't because there's survival of the fittest. If you're not a smart person, you might die of some stupid thing you're doing or just the lack of having money. I mean, it's not that we have these rights, it's that we earn these rights.
No, I disagree.
Believe in evolution.
I disagree. I think the fact that you are alive inherently gives you the right of self-determination. If you were born and you exist, then you have the right to decide how you want your life to go. Now, if you're a simple idiot and you are unable to find gainful employment, then you still have the right to choose where you want to get your support from, and to the extent you're able, how that's going to play out, which goes into Article 2 of the manifesto, which in my opinion is necessary to say that to the extent that they are capable, all beings should be self-sufficient.
Yes.
So
that's key.
Yes.
So basically it's not you're choosing to get support or where to get it from. You're then presuming that there is support to be had. So for a dog, for instance, the dog may want to get its support from some kind little old lady who's throwing out scraps. But if that dog isn't smart and instead it decides to be vicious, it may just not survive.
But your premise here is that a dog has the capacity for making conscious choices. Okay, I would propose that dogs are not sentient beings because they don't have the capacity to make conscious choices about their life and circumstances.
Well, they do have the choice of whether or not they're going to trust a human, and actually dogs are very good judges of character.
But do they have that as a choice, or is that an instinctual reaction?
Well, some dogs are vicious. So
and I think that we
sure
have to perhaps come up with a different term then for sentient being. We have to say something other than just that, because, or do an addendum within the documents defining what we mean by sentient being.
Yes.
So a being that possesses conscious self-awareness and is able to communicate through a understandable language. Now, some people would all take it on further that create abstract forms of art and are able to create, I'm trying to find the right word, something that is persistent within the environment, like build a house or make a parking lot or
But that, again, is judging based on our own species definition of what is a home.
But since we have only ourselves at this point to judge by, the reason I added sentient being was in the assumption that at some point we will interact with other beings from other planets, and therefore I don't want to create some sort of, as the phrase was used, Homo sapiens only club, that, well, this applies to Earth people, but we don't really know what you are, so we're going to do whatever we want.
See, I think that it has everything to do with including other species, not just of humanoid people, but of other actual animals.
Well, maybe we should simply say intelligent species.
I don't even know that it's intelligent. No, I think it's all everyone out for themselves.
Well, now again, I can play devil's advocate and see your point, because if we go along with PETA and those sort of people, then they would agree with the first article, because they think it's wrong to take an animal out of the wild and put it into a captive situation.
I do too.
So
I think whenever you change the habitat of a species or a human, you are putting it in some situation that it can't survive as easily without help.
Right, so and you're creating it as a dependent.
Yes,
and you can even make that argument to what we call domesticated animals, house pets, cats and dogs. You're really
no different than a zoo,
which is really unethical, enslaving another creature, and that is probably
same
not
as
okay.
we did with black people. So
now,
it really isn't
then
okay
we have to
for
settle
us
the
to
argument,
take them
though.
Out of that.
Is it okay for us to eat hamburgers, or is it not?
But the thing is, we do these things because we have to do them, and we would be a pathological altruist if we did not, knowing that we would basically die because we are a predator species. If we think it's evil and wrong for us to be meat eaters, well, then we should just kill all the meat eaters out there that are tigers and lions and bears, and maybe not bears so much. But, I mean, all of these other predator species, why don't we hate them? Why is it only us? See, we have this guilty complex where we can't kill anything because we think if we're doing harm, well, that must be us being evil. That's our high oxytocin speaking. And sometimes it's not our friend. We should not be listening to that, because it tells us we cannot eat. We cannot eat what we need to eat for our life. So obviously it's telling us a lot of bad things.
Even beyond that, we get to these places where we, and I believe because of societal conditioning, allow other people to do things that are detrimental to us because we think somehow standing up for ourselves is bad.
Or our species or our race.
And a case in point, I had a gentleman when I was living in a place who was an alcoholic, and I refused to let him come and crash in my apartment when he was blind drunk. And he immediately accused me of being immoral, unethical. How dare I call myself a Christian and not let him... No, I was protecting myself and not supporting his very self-destructive bad behavior. Yeah. But our society judges people who do things like that.
Well, and similarly, if you have a drug addict who's trying to date you, you might want to say something to them. Or if you have somebody who's coming and threatening your family, you might want to have a gun. And that's not evil. It is actually stupid not to have a gun, because if you're waiting for the cops to come and save your life, I'm sorry, but they're not going to be able to be there fast
maybe
enough.
in the first article we need to make an allowance for this situation, that this is not meant to imply that you are not allowed to defend yourself, your family, or your tribe.
Species, your race, whatever.
Yes.
But what it comes down to in the end is we all do what we have to do for our own survival.
We do.
And there's really nothing evil or wrong
And
about it.
as long, I believe, as you are not
Let nature
intentionally,
take its course.
if you're not intentionally seeking to harm someone else
You
through
mean
what
like
you're doing,
tigers do?
then you should be allowed to do whatever it is you're doing.
What if you're having to eat them?
Then you have to eat them.
Well, so you're seeking to harm them. See, your whole argument about how it's evil and wrong to harm. That goes out the window.
I'm only considering right now sentient, intelligent beings. I am not talking about animals. You're the one who is expanding the definition of a sentient being to basically anything that exists. If it's breathing and existing.
I kind of believe that there is intelligence in everything
Well,
in nature.
we'll make another argument. Well, we'll do another video, a whole video on the definition of what is a sentient being and what would be a better way to define the people that we want this article to apply to. Let's do that.
Okay, we just love to argue.
All right.